This is the podcast overview for Chapter 9, Using Health Services. So for this chapter, the first portion of it, you're really going to be looking at just the various people who serve in health services. We have healthcare professionals of all different levels and sorts, so you'll get familiar with who those are and the advantages and drawbacks to each type. So you're going from everything from a nurse to nurse practitioner to a physician assistant to a doctor to psychiatrist, and just understanding how each of them delivers care and what that looks like. Also, the state of medical care today in the U.S. What is that like? How do people typically get care today in the U.S.? And what's the quality of that care? And then you'll compare and contrast our U.S. healthcare system to that of other countries. Understand when people are likely to seek help for their health. So here is another big category of health psychology is called help seeking when it comes to one's health. You're seeing this already in the Terman data as we've been studying the Longevity Project. You've seen all sorts of factors that play a role in who seeks help for health reasons, right? If you're experiencing symptoms or you're having difficulty with a health issue, who is more likely to seek care? And what are those variables? So demographic and individual factors play a role in who is going to seek care. What is the role of the individual's perception of their symptoms or their illness? So different people perceive their symptoms differently, and what factors might dictate how symptoms are perceived. So how I see my symptoms is going to differ from how someone else sees their symptoms. What plays a role in that? Is it culture? Is it family? Is it upbringing? Is it education? Is it SES? I'm going to give you a hint that it's all of those things play a role in how a person interprets what is potentially wrong with them. Understanding who the patient's first line of defense is in health. And common reasons for seeking medical care. Why do people seek care? When do they typically seek care? How bad do symptoms need to get before people seek care? Does it matter? Does it depend on things? And again, the role of demographics and who is likely to seek care, as well as sociocultural factors that might dictate people's healthcare usage, right? So whether or not I go to the doctor or I make a phone call to the doctor might depend on where I'm from, where I live, who's around me, and what experience I've already had with the medical care system. Understanding the factors involved in delay in using health services. Why do people delay? If I'm experiencing some health symptoms, why might I delay? Why might I not go right into the doctor? What might be some things that would cause me to wait? And then we're going to get into a really big model of healthcare, which is called the health belief model. And it basically explains people's delay in using health services. It kind of outlines the steps and reasons why people might delay. Like where a person could be on the path to, making a call to the doctor or going in for care. And then we'll get into an area called complementary, alternative, and integrative medicine, typically referred to as CAME. You'll get familiar with how this differs from quote unquote Western medicine, the kind of medicine we're most familiar with here in the US. What is complementary medicine? What is alternative? And what is integrative? How are those terms used interchangeably, but yet how are they unique from one another? You'll want to be familiar with those definitions. And then familiar with the different modalities of CAME. So how is care delivered in various ways to treat illness, to treat diseases, and what are people's reasons for using CAME? So why might a person choose an alternative path to treatment for a condition or for an illness, and what are people's existing perceptions about the use of alternative medicine. And there's a really great video that I posted this week that talks about all of this. So you'll want to watch that. It's going to help illustrate a lot of this for you. What factors are involved in patients getting information from their practitioners? So here's where we get into the role of the doctor-patient relationship. How do patients talk to their doctors, and how do doctors talk to their patients? What does that relationship look like? What are patients' preferences when they are talking with their doctors? Like, what kinds of information do patients want? How do they want to be treated in that, relationship dyad, right? And we're going to compare and contrast two different styles of communication. There's doctor-centered and then there's patient-centered. There are two different ways that we see doctors and patients interact. Know which one is typically better. Know which one has been dominant for a long time, and now what have we moved into currently in our current style of care delivery. And that will help you to get a sense of what that communication looks like now between doctors and patients. And I say doctors, but I really mean all medical professionals in this instance. Also understand what medical jargon is. What do we mean by medical jargon, and why is it not helpful in the physician-patient relationship? What kinds of problems occur due to medical jargon? And what are some patient factors that can get in the way of practitioners doing their jobs? So I'm a healthcare practitioner, I'm a nurse, a PA, a doctor. I'm trying to do my job. How might things about the patient get in the way of that? What would that look like? What are some methods for improving physician-patient communication? So lots and lots of research looking at how to make this partnership better between physicians and their patients. I mean, it's a pretty important partnership. It's a pretty important relationship when somebody is ill or somebody is sick. And, especially with chronic illness and chronic sickness, their doctor is an important person in their lives. And so that the communication with that doctor is important. And we want to figure out ways to make it the best it can be. So what would be some of those? And then we're going to get into an area called patient adherence. What is it versus non-adherence? What does that mean? How do we measure adherence? So a patient doing what they're supposed to be doing, how do we measure that? Why do patients adhere versus not adhere to medical recommendations, whether it be taking medication or lifestyle changes, behavior changes? Doctor says you have high cholesterol, you need to stop eating certain foods, or you need to start exercising. They give them, their advice, and then what does the patient do? Oftentimes patients don't follow that advice. Well, what are their reasons for not adhering? What types of illnesses are typically ones that are hard to adhere to medical regimens for? And how do demographic factors get in the way? They definitely play a role in a patient's adherence, so know what that is. And then also, lastly, explain the various ways in which patient adherence can be improved. So based on what we know about patient adherence, how can we make it better? Especially if you're dealing with a patient who has HIV or cancer or COPD, a chronic illness, that adherence is really vital for their improvement, their well-being, their quality of life. We want them to live the best quality of life. Well, how can that be? Well, the patient has to be adherent. They have to do what they're instructed to do. And how can we make sure that that happens? What has been found to be successful in terms of patient adherence being improved? Okay, so that wraps up Chapter 9, Objectives.